Hello and welcome everyone. So in this video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of three practice exam questions that are good for like a Econ 101, like principles level microeconomics course. These are going to be supply and demand equilibrium questions. So like what happens if there's a shock to supply and to demand in terms of what we predict for the equilibrium price and quantity that results. So that's what we have in mind here. I've also got Puppy Study Break sitting by helping me cover up the answer because I didn't really plan ahead when I wrote out the solution to this first one. I don't know why Puppy Study Break is sitting on the wall, but Puppy Study Break is pretty eager for a treat. So I think that's what's going on when we took this picture. Anyway, so last year the equilibrium price of coffee, a cup of coffee was $5. Equilibrium quantity sold was 1,000. This year the equilibrium price remained $5. However, the equilibrium quantity fell to 800 cups. Which of the following could correctly explain this phenomenon? Assume that coffee is a normal good, tea is a substitute for coffee, coffee and sugar are complements, and coffee beans are an input to coffee production. So then we're going to look over these five options and we're going to find something that's consistent with that prediction. Namely, we've got to have price not changing and we've got to have quantity falling. So there's really like we could have a situation where we have like a perfectly elastic demand or supply curve. So it's like perfectly horizontal. So the one curve shifts against that one, and then the price is going to stay the same because that's what happened with a perfectly horizontal curve. So we could be looking for one of those amongst these choices, or we could look for something where we would get a combination of a demand shift and supply shift that would give us an ambiguous effect on price. And then, at least in principle, that price effect could balance off and could give us an explanation where there's no change in price. For instance, we have like a decrease in demand that we'd model this as like consumers losing interest, so price would fall and quantity would fall. But maybe at the same time, we have a decrease in supply. So we have decrease in supply means like increasing rarity in the market that would drive up the price, but quantity would fall, right? So in both cases, decrease in demand, decrease in supply, we have a lower quantity, but the effect on price is ambiguous. The two disagree about the direction of the effect, and if they happen at the same time, they could cancel each other out and give us the price of $5. So that'd be the other thing we're kind of looking for here. Okay, so amongst the choices, we have consumer incomes decreasing, the price of coffee beans decreasing. There's a decrease in the number of tea producers, and the supply of coffee is perfectly elastic. The price of coffee beans increases, and the demand for coffee is perfectly inelastic. A medical report highlighted the negative health impact of drinking coffee. I sure hope not. And there's a decrease in the number of coffee producers. There's a decrease in the number of sugar producers, and the supply of coffee is perfectly inelastic. Okay, well, if it's perfectly inelastic, then it's going to be vertical, and then one curve shifting against a vertical curve is definitely going to change the quantity. Or sorry, it's definitely going to change the price, but it's definitely not going to change the quantity, right? So that's not really what we're looking for. All right, so I can move Puppy Study Break, or I can move this. The best answer is D, but let's kind of look over each of these. I've got my explanation. Let's think about like why it's D. Okay, so I'll move Puppy Study Break down. Let's take a look. Like I said, we need for price to remain the same while quantity falls. So we need to find something where either price doesn't change at all or where the prediction is ambiguous, leaves open the possibility of a price effect canceling it out. So why is the best answer D? Well, let's look at A. We have consumer income decreasing. So if it's a normal good, like we're told it is, we're going to get a leftward shift of demand. It's like consumers losing interest. So the price is going to fall, the quantity is going to fall. That's good. We have the price of coffee beans decreasing. Well, coffee beans is an input into the production of coffee, right? You might see price and you're like, wait a second, if price changes, only quantity can change. Well, that's true in the market for coffee beans, but we're focusing on the market for coffee. And coffee beans are an input in the production of coffee. So the reduction of a price of an important input, and I'd say coffee beans are an important input in producing coffee, is going to lead to an increase in supply, right? So an increase in supply, so price falls, quantity rises. Oh, that's a problem because both our decrease in demand and our increase in supply are agreeing on a decrease in price. So that's not what happened here. It stayed at $5. In part B, or option B, there's a decrease in number of tea producers. Okay, so that's going to be a decrease in the supply of tea. That's going to lead to an increase in the price of tea. But that's going to be an increase in the price of an important substitute, which should actually increase demand for coffee. So price in the market for coffee is going to rise, quantity is going to rise. Well, that's immediately kind of a problem because we have quantity rising, but we want quantity to fall. But okay, so it could in principle, if we had something balancing off in the other direction, maybe we could still get a quantity falling. So let's like leave open that option. What happens if we look at supply of, let's see, supply of coffee was perfectly elastic. Um, okay, so decrease in the price of supply of coffee is perfectly elastic. Oh, that means it's going to be really responsive. So if supply is really elastic, that means when so what's going to happen here is we had a decrease in the number of tea producers. That's going to increase the price of tea, right? Leftward shift of supply for tea. That's an important substitute for coffee. So that's going to lead to an increase in demand for coffee. That's going to tend towards an increase in price. That's going to tend towards a decrease in or an increase in quantity. And we didn't have when I read this at first, I was like, oh, supply. Maybe we have a supply. That's why I said like leave open the option something. No, because this is just telling us the supply of coffee is perfectly elastic. It's not actually telling us something that's happening on the supply, like a shock. Instead, what this is saying is, yeah, when this demand curve shifts, it's going to drive up the price of coffee, and quantity supplied is going to match. It's going to like rise up because it's perfectly elastic, meaning it's pretty responsive. So yeah, what happens for B is like increase. Now, hypothetically, if we would have had like a leftward shift of supply, well, we could get an ambiguous effect for quantity, which could be consistent with a decrease in quantity, right? If it's a substantially leftward shift of supply, oh, but there's something disqualifying. The leftward shift of supply would agree with the increase in price from demand. So that's not going to work. There's no way. And plus, we didn't have a supply effect here. Okay, so what about C? The price of coffee beans increases. The demand for coffee is perfectly inelastic. Okay, price of coffee beans increases. Oh, wait a second. That's the price of an important input. What that's going to do is that's going to increase the cost to produce coffee. So it'll give us a leftward shift of supply of coffee. That's kind of what I was hoping would happen for B. No, that's not what happened. It's what we have here for item C. We're going to get a leftward shift to supply, decrease in supply. It's going to tend towards price rising, quantity falling. That quantity is going in the direction we want, but that price increase certainly isn't. And we're told the demand for coffee is perfectly inelastic. That's going to drive price up, right? Quantity is going to stay the same, and price is going to be driven up. That's going to be a problem. So either way, maybe if we take seriously that I said, let's see, so we said demand for coffee is perfectly inelastic. Maybe I actually want to revise that I said. Okay, so the effect on supply decreasing drives, that's like generically going to lead to an increase in price and a decrease in quantity. Now with the further information that demand is going to be perfectly inelastic, it's actually going to tell us quantity is going to be fixed at that level, and then price is going to rise. That's not what we were looking for in this example. We definitely need quantity to fall, and we definitely need price to stay the same. If anything, item C is giving us a situation where quantity stays the same. That's not what we were looking for. Okay, D, a medical report highlighted negative impact of drinking coffee, and there's a decrease in the number of coffee producers. Okay, so this is bad information. It's like bad tastes and or change in tastes and preferences. So consumers are going to lose interest in coffee. That'll tend towards a decrease in quantity, a decrease in price. And so that's the demand decrease. Demand decreases, so price falls and quantity falls. Okay, now let's wait and see what happens on the supply side. Oh, there's a decrease in the number of coffee producers. That's a decrease in supply. Remember at the outset, I was saying one of the things we were kind of looking for was what if we were to get a decrease in demand, decrease in supply? Here it is. So now we've got our decrease in demand, we've got a decrease in supply. They both agree quantity's falling, right? And we got a disagreement about what's happening to price, but they could balance each other out. So what could correctly explain this phenomenon? Yeah, it could be D. D is the best answer. Nevertheless, let's like check E just for completeness. There's a decrease in the number of sugar producers. The supply of coffee is perfectly inelastic. Okay, what was sugar? Coffee and tea were complements. Decrease in the number of sugar producers. That will increase the price of sugar. Oh, an increase in the price of an important complement will actually decrease demand in the good under consideration. So we'd get a decrease in demand, which would tend towards a lower price and a lower quantity for coffee. If we say the supply of coffee is perfectly inelastic, I don't know, I guess maybe we'd fix quantity again like we were talking about for C. That's not going to help us though, because what we want here is we want for quantity to decrease and we want price to stay the same. So it's not option E. Okay, so yeah, the best answer is option D. This one right here. Cool. So moving along. Here's question 2. So suppose the market for oranges is currently in equilibrium at a price of $1 per orange and a quantity transacted of 1.5 oranges per year. If the following events occurred, what impact would this have on the equilibrium price and quantity in the market for oranges? Assume oranges and apples are substitutes in consumption. So on the demand side, there's substitutes. Okay, so we have these things happening at once, and we want to know what's going to happen as a result. So firstly, we're getting poor weather in Washington state, destroying a portion of the apple crop. Then we're getting new farming techniques that are reducing the per unit cost of producing oranges. Then we're getting new research suggesting that eating oranges is beneficial to overall health, more beneficial than previously believed. And I said this in order like we're getting this, then we're getting this. No, that's in order that we're reading it. We're assuming these are happening at the same time, right? Assuming these following events occurred, what impact would they have? Just looking at these, right? Poor weather in Washington state destroys a portion of the apple crop. Oranges and apples are substitutes in consumption. This is going to lead to a decrease in supply of apples that's going to raise the price of apples. A higher price in apples is going to decrease the quantity demanded for apples, and it's going to increase demand for oranges. Okay, that'll tend towards a higher price and a higher quantity. New farming techniques reduces the per unit cost of producing oranges. Oh, that's going to reduce like production costs. That's going to give us an increase in supply. That's going to tend towards a lower price, larger quantity. New research suggests it's more beneficial to overall health than believed. That's an increase in demand for oranges, right? So it'll be a higher price, higher quantity. In both cases, our increase in demand and our increase in demand from 1 and from 3, our demand effects agreed. There are increases in demand. They're going to tend towards a higher price and a higher quantity. And actually, this increase in supply is also tending towards a higher quantity. So we're looking actually for an increase in quantity and an ambiguous effect on price. And so I'm just going to look down. Price will rise for certain. Nope. Price will rise for certain. Nope. Price will rise for certain. Nope. Equilibrium quantity will rise for certain. Yeah, because we have an increase in demand and an increase in supply. And the impact on price is unknown. Yep. So it's option D. Equilibrium quantity will fall for certain. Nope. That's not what happened. All right. So this is just my kind of reinforcing that logic. The effect of I was the increased demand, which leads to higher price and higher quantity. Effect of Roman numeral 1 was the increased demand and leads to a higher price and higher quantity. Roman numeral 2 is the increased supply, higher or lower price, higher quantity. Effect of Roman numeral 3 was the increased demand leads to a higher price and higher quantity. Taken together, we are looking for a higher quantity and an ambiguous effect on price. So this is just like reiterating what I said before I kind of did that walkthrough. And so reinforcing the idea that the answer here is D. Okay. Suppose you observe both the equilibrium price and quantity of beef has fallen. Holding all else constant, which of the following could be consistent with this observation? Assume that beef is a normal good, barbecue sauce is a complement to beef, chicken is a substitute for beef. Consumers have, okay, so here's the things that are happening, and we're looking to see which of these could be consistent with the observation. What's the observation we're looking for? Oh, both price and quantity has fallen. So for that to happen, we need a decrease in demand, right? To get both price and quantity fallen, we need a decrease in demand. So we're looking for something that's going to reinforce a decrease in demand. Consumers have experienced an increase in income, and there's an increase in the number of beef producers. The price of chicken has risen. The price of barbecue sauce has fallen. It's been announced that eating too much beef can be hazardous to your health. The number of beef producers has declined, and the price of chicken has declined. All right, so we'll go over these and we'll look to see what's the effect on demand, what's the effect on supply, and then jointly, what's the prediction for equilibrium price and quantity. Consumers experience an increase in income. Oh, well, we are told beef is a normal good, so we're going to expect an increase in demand. Well, that's a problem because we want quantity and we want price to fall, but let's keep reading. There's an increase in the number of beef producers. That's going to be an increase in supply. So good news is that can give us the price falling, but bad news, that's going to further reinforce the increase in quantity. So it's definitely not number 1. The price of chicken has risen and the price of barbecue sauce has fallen. So price of chicken, so we're told that chicken is a substitute for beef. Price of chicken rising means a decrease in quantity demanded of chicken, but it means what? An increase in demand for beef. The price of barbecue sauce has fallen. That was a compliment. These are both reinforcing an increase in demand for beef. That's not what we want. We wanted a decrease in demand because we need price and quantity to fall. So it's not 1 or 2. It's It's been announced that eating too much beef can be hazardous to your health. Yeah, this is going to be a decrease. This is bad information. It's going to be a decrease in demand due to a change in tastes and preferences. So that's a leftward shift in demand. It could be 3. All right, so, well, it can't be A, right, because that's bringing in 1, which we know is not going to happen. Could be B. We got to check 4. It's not C. It's not 4. Well, it's not 4 only because we're confident with 3. And it's not all of these. Yeah, so actually we know the answer without even doing any more, without even reading 4. We know it's B. Okay, so the number of beef producers has declined and the price of chicken has declined. Number of beef producers has declined. That's going to be a decrease in supply of beef that'll drive up the price, which goes in the opposite direction of what we want, but it is going to help by giving us a lower quantity because a leftward shift in supply gives us a lower quantity. All right, but the price of chicken declined. That's a decrease in the price of a substitute, right? And so that's going to give us an increase in quantity demanded of chicken and a decrease in demand for beef. It could be, in principle, that decrease in demand swamps this decrease in supply, and the overall effect is for price to fall. So it could actually, which could be consistent with this observation, it actually could be 3 and 4 together, right? And so the correct answer is B. Best answer is B, 3 and 4 only. We require a decrease in price and quantity. Item 1 gives us an increase in demand, so higher price, higher quantity. Also an increase in supply, so lower price, higher quantity. Item 2 gives us an increase in demand, so higher price, higher quantity. Actually, for both effects. 3 gives us the decrease in demand we were looking for. That fits. 4 gives us a decrease in supply, so higher price, lower quantity. The higher price isn't good, the lower quantity is, but we have a decrease in demand from our second effect, which gives us a lower price and lower quantity. Jointly, that does fit. Okay, so that's the walkthrough for each of the 3. Whenever I see barbecue sauce, I think of that clip from Ted Lasso. So maybe I'll link that. I don't know. Here's Puppy Study Break. And then here's me being really cold at Sleeping Bear Dunes. I've got a problem set question about Sleeping Bear Dunes. This is Sleeping Bear Dunes in February. So it was cold. It's really cold that day. I was having a good hair day, so I thought I'd, do that for the picture. But I had my hat back on pretty quick because it was cold that day. It's like single digits and then windy. You can go right down by the water. You don't want to get too close to the water because there's snow, and the snow goes over the water. And you can't tell necessarily if the snow is over sand or if the snow is over water unless you're really familiar with the beach, which I am, but you don't want to go too close to the water. It could be sort of a dangerous situation, but it's beautiful. You get a chance. Well, you take the dune climb trail right down to the water. Joys of living in the northern frozen tundra of Michigan, not Wisconsin. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.